Winter in Edmonton doesn't pull any punches. A small issue in your heating, plumbing, or ventilation system can lead to big headaches and big bills when you're stuck in minus 30 degrees Celsius. Today, we're talking with Scott from Watermen Mechanical to walk us through exactly how homeowners can prepare for the winter blues. All right, I've got a quote from John Ruskin. Quality is never an accident. It is always the result of intelligent effort. Winter prep isn't random checklist work. It's deliberate, smart maintenance, and planning. All right, Scott, what's the first thing a homeowner should check or think about when they want to winterproof their mechanical systems?
If they're worried about the cold weather, Trevor, I would say it's got to be the hose bibs and your main water shutoff right by your water meter.
Yeah, those are huge, especially the hose bibs.
Yeah, hose bibs are a big one. So you got to undo the hose bib in the fall. I know it painstaking and sometimes we can forget, especially Thanksgiving coming up. But yeah, just undo your hose bib, let it drain out. Drain out your hose, obviously. But yeah, if there's water sitting in those hose bibs, even if they are non-freeze, they can freeze and crack.
Right. So for average people out there, does everybody know what a hose bib is?
Possibly not, I guess, but it's like your outdoor water connection. So where you actually put your hose into the house.
Right. Okay. So checking the hose bibs, make sure that those are disconnected and turned off, obviously. And then what else?
Main water shutoff's a big one, just because then if you do get a frozen pipe in the wintertime and it cracks and then so suddenly bursts and your water filling up your basement or inside of a wall or a ceiling space, then you can go quickly to your mechanic room and shut that water off at the water meter. If it's not checked often, there's a good chance in some of these older homes in Edmonton that you're not going to be able to turn them off.
Yeah. And that's a bad thing because then you're just going to have a flood. It's going to be awful.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you're really panicking.
You're going to be panicking like crazy. In your years servicing Edmonton and area, what are the most common failures you see once the deep cold sets in, and when do they usually start?
Yeah, so that deep cold, you start hitting minus 30 for a few days there, Trevor, and a lot of new construction, a lot of old construction, you can get frozen water lines in ceiling spaces. So in a renovation project or a new home, we don't like to put any type of water lines or drainage lines in an outside wall.
Okay. All right. So what do you do instead of that?
So a lot of contractors, we just ask them to make what we call a plumbing wall or a pony wall or a partial wall in front of the outside wall. So it's actually in front of the vapor barrier. So the water lines are never in that outside freezing space.
Right.
Because, and a lot of them will say that you can use hard insulation in behind the wall and then you should be good with your plumbing inside the vapor barrier. But from my experience, when it hits those minus 30s up in top of that rim joist in the corner of your house, just not a lot of heat penetrates into those areas. So you kind of got to keep free of those.
Yeah. We had that happen to us one time in a rental house we were in. They'd put the water lines in the outside wall.
Yeah.
And it wasn't the water lines that froze. It was the drain line.
Yeah. Dishwasher drain lines, they get too close to the outside wall. Dishwasher water lines, fridge water lines. A lot of these appliances can do that for sure.
So let's talk heating systems. So furnaces, boilers, in-floor heat. What are the critical maintenance steps someone should do before the freeze hits?
Honestly, always good to get your boiler, furnace, hot water tank checked out, especially before the cold season. A big one, obviously simple, thermostats and filters on furnaces. Boilers, just testing what type of chemical or what type of water treatment you have in your boiler system. If it's glycol or just water, a lot of people out there don't know, but you can get it tested pretty easily at one of your local wholesalers. But yeah, get that tested, check your filters, sediment filters, air intakes, exhausts, things like that. Make sure everything's grading properly and clear of any debris because a lot of leaves get caught up in those air intakes and we get a lot of calls for that right now.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, plumbing is always a target in cold months. What are your tips for preventing frozen or burst pipes, especially in Edmonton?
Well, if you're in an older home, I would say that just make sure that any water lines that are near the outside of your house, if you have an open ceiling, make sure to check those. Obviously, just keep your heat up, keep your furnace filter clean. That's a really big one. Thermostat, batteries, always always have some at the ready, so you don't have to run off to the Home Depot to pick some new batteries up. Those are very simple. Again, check your main water valve and your hose bibs, just disconnect them. And basically, if you see a valve in your house, you should be testing it every 6 months or a year just to make sure it's not frozen up, seized with the water hardness.
All right, perfect. Now, what role does ventilation and air circulation play in preventing moisture, ice, or other winter damage in mechanical systems?
Yeah. So air circulation, again, like we kind of talked about a new home and how they'll insulate in different ways and drywall over water lines and kind of keeping them to the outside so that you get these free open spaces. But air circulation is needed in order to keep those older homes, the water lines not freezing. So if you go and do a renovation, just make sure that you're checking those water lines to be sure that they're not in those outside walls. An older kitchen often is right up against that frost wall. You'll have copper water lines butting right up against it. Now, it hasn't frozen in the past because the ceiling's open, right? They got drop ceiling or something like that. But the minute you go do a renovation, the contractor might say, well, it hasn't frozen in years, so it should be okay. But from what we see and what we tell our contractors, no, they've got to bring those walls, build an extra wall and bring those water lines outside of that exterior wall.
Yeah. And like maybe not minus 15, but on the occasions when we get minus 30,
minus 30 can really settle in.
Yeah, it's a different kind of cold.
Yeah, no, for sure.
I can't imagine what it's like in the Northwest Territories and like minus 50s and stuff like that's just ungodly.
Even Fort Mac and Grand Prairie get up to those temps, and it's cold. It's bitter.
Not good.
No.
All right, so let's talk about gas lines and gas fittings.
Sure.
Okay. How do they factor into winter readiness? So are there any checks that people often overlook when it comes to gas lines?
I mean, gas lines, most of the time you're looking to an experienced professional to install them. So you hope that all gas lines are sized properly. We're starting a renovation project actually with a very reputable contractor in the Edmonton area. And the gas line, we went to go look at installing a new gas range, but the entire gas line was undersized to the whole house. Now, not a huge issue because all that happens is these appliances just fire a little bit less. So they call it a misfire. But in the case of winter, if you've got a couple fireplaces and a couple furnaces and you might have a gas range and you start lighting all those at the same time, including your hot water tank or your boiler, then they can definitely start misfiring. So in those cold winter snaps, then you're starting to run a lot more gas. And so you just want to make sure it's sized properly. But it's kind of, there's a few calculations to do. So you might want to get somebody out to your house to do that professionally.
Gotcha. So professional, come out, make sure that they've got everything measured up right. And now, do you need any permits? Like, is there any changes would they have to change the gas meter if it needs to be upsized?
Pretty rare that we change a gas meter. We deal with ACO for that. We kind of send them in the information and they let us know if that gas meter is up to size. Most gas meters can handle the load in a home, but it's the actual gas line coming from the gas meter that will have to get sized properly.
So from your perspective, what's an acceptable lifespan for major mechanical equipment like a furnace, a boiler, and when should a homeowner consider replacing those items?
So honestly, it's up to the manufacturer's warranty often at times, but we do suggest kind of at around the 10-year mark, you start doing kind of a cost analysis, and we're happy to give that to you quickly over the phone. So basically, if somebody calls us for a hot water tank issue, they've got no hot water, depending on their type of hot water tank, we can advise them on the types of parts that they might need to service this and how long it roughly will take. So quite often a simple hot water tank repair could be anywhere between $300 to $700, $800 if you have to replace a gas valve, a pilot assembly, a burner assembly, anything like that. Sometimes you can get away with just cleaning out exhaust venting or intake venting, and that can, turn your hot water tank back on. But if you start replacing all these different components on a hot water tank, then it starts to get costly. And at some point, we always advise the homeowner that, hey, you got to think about whether spending $600 to $800 on a hot water tank repair is worth it when your tank's 10 years old. So around that 10-year mark, we kind of start saying to homeowners, depending on the cost of repairing, you might just want to replace it.
Yeah, and with the hard water that we have in the Edmonton region, hot water tanks, they do build up with sediment.
They do.
Inside, and that kind of reduces the lifespan as well.
Yeah, it can get caked on with the high temperatures, and then everyone's tendency is to turn up the hot water tank to get more hot water, and then it bakes on all this sediment even more, creating an insulating barrier. And then it's kind of the chicken and the egg thing. You have to keep turning it up, and then it creates more sediment, and then you turn it up again, and so on and so forth. So yeah, after about 10 years, we do recommend that they think about replacing it, but we're definitely happy to go out and repair hot water tanks, furnaces, boilers, anything like that.
Sure.
Yep.
So Scott, if there is somebody who is on a tighter budget, what are some of the must-dos versus the nice-to-dos when it comes to winter prep, and where should they invest their money first?
Well, I would say a good one would be, the water meter. So just the main water valve right by your water meter. Just make sure that that works. And if you don't want to swap it out, just make sure you're opening and closing it, once or twice a year. That should be sufficient. And even when you do close it, why don't you go test the faucet in the basement out upstairs and see if you're actually getting any water flow.
Right.
It should really shut it down. Even if it's not working perfectly, it'll really slow it. But you do have to call out EPCOR. So it is quite the process to get that valve changed. So we coordinate with EPCOR, and then we show up at your house and we swap out that valve for you. But that is a bit of a cost. So if you're looking to save some money, just test that valve. If it still works, we can always install one upstream of your water meter. It's not quite as good as getting your main water shutoff replaced by your water meter, but it's second best. The other thing, simple, would be hose bibs. We talk about that a lot. Older homes and even newer homes, sometimes these non-freeze hose bibs, or what they call non-freeze, aren't installed properly without grading. And so, just take a look at them. They should be, when you turn off that hose, the water should trickle out of the outlet.
Do you have any real examples of what went wrong in the winter with a client and how you could have prevented it with proper preparation?
Yeah, that's, I guess the biggest one that we ever ran into was a business, and they didn't pay their heating bill.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, they didn't pay their gas bill. So then their whole bay froze, and we had to replace absolutely, I don't even want to guess at how many leaks the guys had to replace in there. And once they turned the system on, they'd find another leak, and then they'd shut it down and repair it. And so it took, two guys a few days to repair all these leaks in this commercial space. But aside from paying your bill, of course, because we should all be doing that. It's the hose bibs. I think the hose bibs are the biggest one. Again, we've had them crack in a poorly done renovation or in an older home. And, sometimes these winter snaps, they hit hard. And, with the change in weather patterns and everything like that, you never know what's going to happen. I know we get generally warmer winters, but we also get some pretty serious cold snaps. So just make sure that water meter, that water main shutoff valve works well, and that your hose bibs are in good working order, and that all the other valves in your house work well. So that way, if an emergency does strike, you can turn them off quickly.
Perfect. Now, finally, for homeowners around Edmonton, Sherwood Park, St. Albert, etc., what seasonal checklist or schedule do you recommend they follow as the cold season approaches?
Yeah. So again, I'd do a quick walkthrough of your house, get into your mechanical room. You can always give us a call if you don't know what to look for. In your mechanical room, you should be able to find your water meter, your furnace, your hot water tank, on demand if you have one. And then you can just, again, check your main water shutoff valve, check your furnace filter, check your thermostat. You could even open up your hot water tank a little bit and just bleed that out and make sure it's got no sediment buildup. That shouldn't be a huge issue with Edmonton's water right now, but never a bad idea just to make sure that drain actually does work. So if your tank cracks, you can drain it quickly. The other thing I would do is if you got newer appliances, go outside, follow that venting on one of the sides of your house. You should have some venting, and just make sure that everything is unplugged. And you could even turn on, run your hot water or turn on your furnace, and just make sure it's pumping out the warm air out of the exhaust.
Right. Okay. Well, those are pretty simple ways to check that things are working and venting properly.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice. Okay. Now, there is one other thing that comes to mind is ice buildup on your exhaust vents from your furnaces and boilers and that type of thing. Maybe talk about that a bit.
Sure. So you shouldn't have a ton of condensate coming off of those if it is graded back to your appliance, which is what we're supposed to be doing. You shouldn't be getting a ton of exhaust, but obviously as that cold air comes out, warmer air comes out, it's going to condensate and then, freezing point, and you get that little icicle building up. So honestly, all you can do is just keep it clear. And there's not much you can do about that, but just make sure that your venting inlet and outlets are always clear in the winter.
So your furnace can breathe well.
Exactly. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. Thanks so much, Scott, for sharing with us today. And if you guys are looking for a great plumber, you need to get your house ready for winter, call Watermen Mechanical. Scott will be happy to come out and give you a quote. We'll see you guys on the next video.
Thanks, Trevor.